soil is hungry. Their roots are deep. They pull you down while you're fast asleep.
That's the song they used to hum around the fire at Camp Stillwater. The one I heard 100 times before I figured out what it really meant. And now, it's the only thing I can still hear when the world goes quiet. My name is Tyler Braddock, and I'm writing this because I need someone out there to know what happened to me in 2021, even if I can't always tell where the truth ends and the nightmares begin. I had just turned 17, thought I was practically a grown-up, and agreed to spend 8 weeks as a counselor in training at a place my mom found through a friend of a friend, somewhere upstate near Rochester, New York. She pulled into the gravel lot that first morning, gave me a hug that lasted a little too long, and drove away before I could change my mind. And looking back, I think she felt something was off about that place, even if she couldn't name it out loud. The director, a tall, thin man named Mr. Hollis, met me at the wooden gate with a polite smile that never quite reached his eyes, and his handshake felt cold and clammy in a way I still can't forget, like he had been holding his hands under ice water for way too long. He pointed me down a narrow path toward Cabin 7, which the older kids jokingly called the Whisperer's Cabin. And the building itself smelled of wet pine and something older, something earthier, like the walls had been soaking up secrets for years and had finally started to sweat. I dropped my bag on the lower bunk and tried to make friends with the other boys in my cabin, but they all looked at me with this strange, tired kindness, like they already knew something I didn't. I laughed it off as some kind of hazing ritual and went to bed early, exhausted from the long drive. But I woke up around 2 in the morning to the sound of children singing an old folk song I didn't recognize. This low, humming melody drifting through the log walls like smoke, soft and slow and somehow wrong in a way I couldn't put into words. When I crept to the small window, I saw pale lights moving between the pines out by the lake, faint glowing orbs drifting in a slow line, almost like people walking but with no footsteps and no voices, just that melody getting louder the longer I listened, like it was tuning itself to my heartbeat. I wanted to wake up my counselor, this college kid named Elliot, who had talked my ear off about his podcast on the drive in, who kept asking me and the other kids if we had any good ghost stories for his next episode. But Elliot's bed was empty, the sheets still smooth and cold, like nobody had ever slept in them at all. And when I looked around the dark cabin, all the other boys were lying on their backs with their eyes wide open, staring straight up at the ceiling, lips moving in perfect sync as they whispered numbers under their breath, counting in rhythm with that song. And the soft sound of their voices made my skin crawl because it didn't sound like them. It sounded like something wearing them. I pressed myself against the wall and didn't move for the rest of the night, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth, my whole body cold even though the air was warm. And I made a promise to myself that I would ask Elliot about all of this the very next morning, that I would find a way to make sense of what I was seeing, no matter how long it took to get a real answer out of anyone in that place. By the second week, I had started keeping a small black journal, because my therapist back home always said writing things down helped with anxiety. And honestly, I needed something solid to hold on to when everything else at that camp felt like a slow dream I couldn't wake up from. I wrote down every strange thing I noticed during the day. The way the lake water stayed ice cold no matter how hot the afternoon got. The way the counselors always seemed to know what we were about to say before we said it. The way nobody ever mentioned Cabin 12 at the far end of the property, even though I could see the door standing open from the mess hall, swinging gently in the dark. even when there was no wind. But the thing that bothered me most, the thing I kept coming back to in my notes, was this old stone well behind the mess hall, half covered in moss and almost hidden by tall ferns. And every time I walked past it, I felt this strange pull in the pit of my stomach, like the ground itself was breathing underneath me, like something down there was listening and waiting for me to come a little closer each day. I asked Jonah about it during breakfast one morning, and he went pale, just set down his fork and stared at his empty plate. And when I asked Mr. Hollis about the well during lunch, his whole face changed, the friendly mask dropping for just a second to show something cold and tired underneath. And he told me in a low, steady voice that the well was off limits and had been for a long time, that it was a place of history and I needed to respect it. And when I asked what kind of history, he just looked at me with those dead gray eyes and said some things are better left buried where they are. That night, I snuck out of the cabin with a flashlight, telling myself I was just going to take a quick look and then straight back to bed before anyone noticed. But the path to the well pulled at me the whole way, like my feet already knew the route, even though I had never walked it before. And Elliot was waiting for me in the shadow of a tall pine tree, looking more scared than I had ever seen a person look, his hands shaking so bad the flashlight beam was jumping all over the dirt path. He pulled me deeper into the trees where nobody could see us and told me he had been coming to this camp since he was 8 years old, that his older brother had been a counselor here years ago, and that something happened during the summer of 2019 that nobody in town would talk about, that the camp almost got shut down for good. But Mr. Hollis had some kind of connections that made it all quietly disappear from the local news, and that his brother had moved to Arizona that fall and changed his number and acted like he didn't even remember his own family anymore. Elliot slowly rolled up his sleeves and showed me his wrists, and there were these strange scars, perfect little circles burned into his skin like brands. And he said he got them 3 summers ago when he tried to pull his brother out of that well, that something down there had grabbed his arm and dragged him halfway to the edge before he finally tore himself free. And he said it softly, almost in a whisper, like the words themselves were afraid of being heard by whatever lived below. And I stood there in the dark and felt the ground shift slightly under my shoes, like the earth was turning over in its sleep, like it was trying to get more comfortable. I should have left. I know that now. I should have called my mom and made up some excuse about being sick or homesick or just plain scared out of my mind. But something kept me there, this strange pull I still don't fully understand. Like the camp had wrapped a hook somewhere deep inside my chest the moment I walked through the wooden gate, and I was only now starting to feel the line slowly tighten. The other campers started acting even weirder after that, like they were all in on some secret I hadn't been told, and I noticed that every single night at exactly midnight, the kids would slip out of their bunks one by one and walk toward the back of the property in a slow, silent line. Their eyes half open, their faces empty, their feet moving in the same slow rhythm, like something was counting steps for them, like a puppeteer pulling invisible strings from somewhere far away where I could not follow. I followed them on the 3rd night, keeping far enough back that I could hide in the shadows of the tall pines, and what I saw when I got close made me drop to my knees behind a low bush and forget how to breathe, because all the campers were standing in a perfect circle around the old well singing that same folk song, the one I had heard on my very first night, the one that went,
Your soil is hungry, their roots are deep. They pull you down while you're fast asleep.
and they were singing it in this round, this layered harmony that didn't sound like kids at all. It sounded older, like the melody had been passed down for 100 summers in a row by voices that never aged and never rested. Voices that knew the words long before the camp was ever built on that quiet stretch of lonely land. Mr. Hollis stood at the far side of the circle with his back to me, his arms raised toward the full moon, like he was waiting for something to come down out of the sky and accept an offering. And I could see a faint, pale light rising slowly out of the well. Not like fire, more like mist, like the air itself was turning into something solid and alive, and the light had a shape to it, a kind of leaning, hungry shape that seemed to be listening to the song the way a dog listens to its master's voice. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My voice was gone. My legs were gone. I was nothing but eyes and fear. And then Mr. Hollis turned around slowly and looked straight at me, straight through me. And for the first time, I saw his face clearly in the pale moonlight. And it wasn't really his face at all. It was something wearing him like a coat. Something with eyes that were pure black from edge to edge, and a smile that stretched a little too wide across his cheeks. And when it spoke, it said my name in a voice that sounded like 100 kids whispering at the same time, every single syllable perfectly in sync. And it said my name like it had been waiting years to say it out loud, like it had been practicing in the dark for the moment I would finally stand in that clearing and listen with my whole body, my whole mind, my whole breaking heart. I ran so hard, the branches scratched my arms bloody, and I didn't feel a thing. I ran until I reached my cabin and slammed the door and pressed my back against it. And even then, I could feel the ground under my feet humming softly, like a heartbeat. Like something was right beneath the floorboards, breathing along with me, waiting patiently for me to fall asleep. We made a plan to destroy the well on the last night of camp, the night before all the parents were coming for pickup, because that was when the thing would be strongest and also when the camp would be busiest, which meant witnesses and noise and a better chance of getting out alive if everything went wrong in a hurry. Elliot had somehow gotten his hands on a small wooden crate of professional fireworks, the kind you usually have to sign for at a store, and we spent the whole afternoon wiring them together near the well, hiding the long fuses under leaves and rocks, telling ourselves that fire and noise were the only language this thing wouldn't understand, that if we hit it hard enough, maybe it would just let go of all of us and sink back into the deep ground where it came from in the first place. I remember standing with him in the woods as the sun went down, watching the parents arrive in their minivans and SUVs, watching Mr. Hollis greet them at the gate with that same polite, empty smile, watching the kids run around in the grass like nothing was wrong, like they hadn't been walking in their sleep and singing that song every single night, like none of us were standing on top of something that had been quietly feeding on us for years. And Elliot put his hand on my shoulder and said he was proud of me for staying, for helping him finish what his brother couldn't. And he made me promise that if things went bad, I would run and never come back. That some things are not meant to be defeated, only survived. And I promised him, even though I already knew somewhere in my gut that neither of us was leaving those woods the same way we came in that quiet, tired, sticky summer evening. When midnight finally came, we lit the fuses and counted under our breath. And for a second, everything went exactly the way we had hoped. The fireworks shot up into the black sky and rained down around the well. Explosions rocking the clearing one after another in a chain of bright orange light and white smoke. And we heard this horrible shriek rise up from underground, a sound that didn't belong to any human voice, something ancient and furious and in pain. And I let myself believe for just a moment that we had actually won, that we had done it, that the long story of that place was finally over. But then Mr. Hollis was standing right behind us, just standing there at the edge of the trees in his camp shirt and his old boots, and his face was his own, again, just a tired, sad, ordinary man with gray in his beard. And somehow that scared me more than the monster ever had, because monsters are supposed to look like monsters, not like someone you might pass on a quiet street. He said the well could not be destroyed because it was connected to him now, that killing it would mean killing him too, but he didn't care anymore, that he was tired, so tired of feeding it, tired of pretending the kids who left every summer ever came back home. And before I could speak, the thing pushed its way out through his face, and this time Mr. Hollis didn't fight it. He just opened his arms and let it have him completely, and the ground cracked open around the well, and something pulled at my ankles like a hand made of cold soil. And Elliot grabbed my wrist and held on as we both slid toward the broken edge, and I watched the pale light rise up out of the dark to meet us as we fell into nothing at all. I don't remember how I got out, honestly. The whole thing is just flashes and fragments. The feeling of being pulled down into cold, wet darkness. The sound of Elliot screaming my name until his voice faded into nothing. The taste of dirt and lake water mixing in my mouth until I couldn't tell which was which. And then sunlight, bright and hot on my face, and my mom's voice calling my name from what felt like 1,000 miles away. I woke up in my own bed, 3 states away, and my mom was sitting next to me, holding my hand, and she said I had been in a coma for 2 weeks, that there had been a fire at Camp Stillwater, and most of the property had burned down to the ground, that Mr. Hollis and Elliot and several of the other counselors had been found dead in the ashes, and that I was the only survivor, the only person pulled out of the wreckage still breathing, the only name on the list of the living. I asked about the other campers, the kids I had shared a cabin with, the kids I had seen walking in a slow line to the well every midnight, the faces I had been starting to learn during those long, strange weeks. And my mom gave me this confused, worried look and said there were no other campers, that the camp had been empty when the fire started, that it had been closed for years, that Mr. Hollis was the only caretaker living on the property because he had lost everything and had nowhere else to go. And when I asked about the names of the kids I had lived with all summer, she just shook her head slowly and said there were no records, no parents, no emergency contacts, no photos in the office. Like they had never existed outside that place at all. Like they had been dreamed up by the trees themselves to keep me company while the real horror happened somewhere just out of sight. I still have nightmares about that well, about the thing wearing Mr. Hollis's face, about Elliot's hand slipping out of mine as I fell. And most nights I wake up at exactly 2 a.m. to the sound of children humming that old folk song, this low, soft melody that seems to come from inside my own skull now. And I whisper the words back because I cannot stop myself, because some part of me is still down there in the dark with them.